transformation over the past few years, moving beyond military defense to include the total resilience of nations, social, economic, and technological foundations. In this new era, a threat to a supply chain or a power grid is recognized as a direct assault on the stability of the state itself, blurring the lines between domestic policy and national defense. As Europe navigates a fundamental shift in energy architecture, the traditional maps of supply and transit are being radically redrawn. Recent tensions in the Middle East and the situation in the Strait of Hormuz over the last 2 months, combined with the transition away from a reliance on east-west routes, since the Ukrainian war, have moved a diverse north-south strategy from a policy proposal to a security imperative. Today, we are here to discuss how corridors like the vertical gas corridor and the Caspian Black Sea Mediterranean routes can be not only merely infrastructure projects, but also the lateral lifelines of European energy resilience. In addition, our discussion today will explore how we balance the immediate necessity of gas security with long-term geopolitical promise of green hydrogen and electricity interconnections. I will start with Ms. Walton. Mr. BUତ୍ତOI will connect with us in a few moments. Ms. Walton, in your experience assessing global markets, how has the definition of energy resilience evolved for international investors since the Ukrainian war and now in light of the conflict for Iran?
Thank you very much. I spent my career in capital markets and I was global head of research for a few big banks. And so I concentrated my career on looking at big global macro issues. And this is a very interesting time. I would say that the biggest impact on how energy resilience has evolved since 2022 has been, before 2022, resilience meant price hedging and hedging with various instruments, and that was the priority. After 2022, and especially after the Iran conflict, it means managing systemic risk. And that systemic risk is no longer cyclical. I believe that that systemic risk is actually structural, and we have to price in that structural risk. And what does that mean? That means understanding where a project sits within a competing geopolitical systems, supply chain architectures, and physical infrastructure networks. Geographical positioning is very important, and that's why this region is so critical. It's also understanding whether a corridor can be physically weaponized. Iran has showed that the backup to the backup can also fail simultaneously. So after Russia, it was Iran. And of course, now we have a very big dependency on the United States. 60% of the LNG into Europe is from the US. I should explain, despite the fact that I have an American accent, I'm actually half American, I'm half British, and if it's possible, I'm also half Slovak as well. My mother is a Slovak, and that's my connection to the region. So investors are now being asked to price in a world which no single supply chain is actually truly safe, and in which resilience of an energy project depends upon the depth of its redundancy. And for practical implications, the repricing of that redundancy is called a resilience premium. And just very quickly, I can explain what I believe the resilience premium means. It's an infrastructure that offers genuine physical redundancy. It is anchored in a geopolitically stable jurisdiction, which is very, very difficult. It connects to multiple supply chains and sources rather than a single one, so this is really a wish list. And the resilience premium is now commanding a significant higher valuation multiple than projects that depend on a single source or a single transit node.
Okay. Thank you very much. And the region is really critical, and I want to go to Mr. BUତ୍ତOI if he's connected. Later, okay, so I will continue with Mr. RAVNACHKI. How essential is cross-border technical and corporate cooperation in ensuring that energy corridors, like the vertical gas corridor, remain functional during periods of high demand and crisis?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you today. Interesting topics that we need to discuss. I'll first start with the commodity itself. Because as I said yesterday in another panel, there's not a single source that can guarantee energy security. And I think gas is here to stay for quite some time in order to ensure in this. So in terms of fundamentals, we have the supply. We have different suppliers. We have the LNG from the US. We have the Caspian gas supplies. Hopefully soon we'll have the Black Sea offshore supply. This is on the supply side. On the demand side, considering the fact that we have more and more renewables into the system, we need a balancing thing for balancing the whole system. So gas would be there. But the major thing that connects the supply and demand, this would be the infrastructure. And there is no single infrastructure company that can deal with situations of high demand and crisis without cooperating with other infrastructure companies. And I think in that sense, infrastructure is the backbone for resilience. And when we have good cooperation on a level of infrastructure companies, we provide the necessary energy where it's demanded in the best way possible. This can be achieved through cooperation on a lot of levels. Cooperation in terms of interoperability between systems, transparent capacities mechanisms and how they're sold, and constant communication between the infrastructure companies. I think in that sense, the vertical corridor is an energy pathway. It's an energy highway that's of vital importance, not just for Bulgaria and the region, but for Europe in general. Because as we said, we have a transformation in the way gas has been transported since 2022. Now it's more south to north. And if we used to be in the periphery of Europe, I now think that we are a cornerstone for Europe energy security, and I'll stop here. Thank you.
Okay. We came here to discuss about Europe and energy security. As we look towards more integrated energy market within the EU, Mr. MENEGAZZO, what are the primary benefits of strengthening electricity interconnections between the Mediterranean and the Balkans? And furthermore, are current EU directives and financial instruments sufficient to effectively promote and safeguard energy security of the region and of the EU?
Thank you. So, it's a very broad
Yes, of course.
scope. The energy market in Europe does not exist yet. Because we do not have as many interconnections as we should have in order to have a market that is fully integrated. Of course, I'm referring to electricity here. The lacking part is, of course, the infrastructure that is creating, so the TSO part, connecting all the European Union countries to achieve a common market. So theoretically, when there is a lot of sun in the summer in the southern part of Europe, the northern part of Europe should be able to benefit of it and vice versa. And I see here the biggest gap in the European, let's say, regulatory or legislative framework, because still interconnection between countries is a topic discussed between the two bordering countries, which is not acceptable anymore. So my wish is that one of the topics that the European Union should be stronger and imposing to the countries is investment in interconnection. And of course, find a way in which this is not a burden for the citizen of a specific country or another. But without this, we will not achieve a common electricity market in Europe in the foreseeable time, which is a huge problem, because our world, especially in Europe, is going towards a bigger electrification. So we are electrifying more, more, and more, and more. We have a technological advantage, but we have also the consumer take in this situation. So we cannot play the rules of 2026, 2029, 2030, 2032, 2032 with a playbook that was written in the 70s. This is complete madness. So I think that we are in a very, very crucial point with some hard decisions needs to be taken. I personally believe that any discussion, and again, I'm referring to electricity, which for me is the backbone of the energy system. Any discussion related to national energy sovereignty in the European Union is a very dangerous and time-wasting exercise. I think that it's important that we speed up the path of electrification. I think that today, and I understand, but you know, there are the laws of physics and the law of the wishful thinking. I still think that what Europe did a couple of years ago, the Green Deal, was and still is a fantastic project, a fantastic ambitious project. Of course, as any long-term project, you are working with moving targets. So the data that you had at that point are not the data that today are relevant. Still, the fact that you need to go towards a bigger electrification, a bigger penetration of renewables, high-scale, small-scale prosumers in the market is our key of success. And I would keep out the ideological part, because today when somebody speaks about Green Deal or energy transition, the label ideologic is attached there, I believe quite in data. And if I have to look at an example of somebody, so if the Green Deal or the energy transition is bad, should be bad for everybody, not for one specific country. And today I look at the data of countries like still European countries that have been impacted by the energy transition, Green Deal, or whatever regulation that Europe gave in that sense. And I have the example of Spain. Spain has a price that is the day-ahead market. You have 14 euros per megawatt, very, very often. It's the country that is growing most in Europe, 2%, attracting a lot of investments. And one of the reasons is that they planned and they took actions in order to grab all the benefits of this, let's say, regulation. We cannot blame our undoing or not action and put, you know, an umbrella that this is bad. We should look ourselves in the mirror and say, did we grab the opportunity or not? Today, in this part of Europe, in Romania, the answer is no, we did not.
Okay, let's see the opinion of this part of Europe. Mr. BUତ୍ତOI, I think he's connecting with us. And I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear us?
Yes. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Thank you very much for being with us. I will ask you a couple of questions, and then you can continue your meeting. Sorry for the interruption. Like other European states, Romania has been affected by the conflict in the Middle East. While prices are an issue across the region, the situation remains unpredictable. In this context, it is evident that energy dependence and security are becoming increasingly important. Which steps have been taken to confront the current situation from the perspective from EU and from the Romania? And do you believe that energy is the new geopolitics?
Thank you so much. This was the discussion of this morning informal Council of Ministers of Energy from European Union, hosted by Cyprus, the country that has now the presidency of the Council of European Union. The European Commission issued the Accelerator EU. Everyone is looking for more coordination at the EU level. The national governments are invited to take temporary measures. Romania took already some measures to limit the margins of the wholesalers and producers of fuels, also looking to concrete temporary support for agriculture and transport. But clearly we are just at the beginning of a very difficult situation. We are looking also to the prices of electricity, and I just heard, and I totally echo what Alessio MENEGAZZO just stated. The prices will be a challenge this summer and the coming winter. The price of natural gas is quite high. Some of the capacities in the Middle East cannot be replaced very fast. Also, there are other structural problems that we didn't solve yet in the region, in Romania and the European Union. So the situation is still difficult. More EU coordination is helpful, but it's not enough. On the medium term, of course, we need to reduce dependencies, to become more resilient, more independent, to diversify sources. That's why the vertical corridor is so important for Romania, for Greece, for Bulgaria, for the whole region. The partnership with the United States is so important for LNG, and also to increase the interconnection inside European Union. And here the pressure should be on the new legislation on grids and on the European Commission to convince Austria to increase the interconnection capacity with Hungary, that our region could benefit from flows of electricity for the good prices that sometimes we can have from north and west of Europe. And then after we will complete our strategic investments, Cernavodă 3 and 4, the gas-powered new capacities, the renewables that we invest so much in Romania and in the region, to have the possibility to export electricity to the west and north of Europe. So interconnections in electricity and natural gas are of paramount importance.
Okay.
And yes, energy is more and more dictating geopolitical decisions.
Okay. As you said, Romania has an advantage position as a bridge connecting Western Europe with the East and Northeast with the Southeast. How does Romania view the balance between maintaining the traditional energy routes and support the new, like the vertical gas corridor?
We can find this balance clearly. The vertical corridor, as I said, is extremely important for the region. This will bring us LNG from United States, our trusted partner. You know that Europe is now implementing Repower EU, total phase out of imports from Russia. Romania was not so much directly affected because we did not import since many years from Russia, but the region is still dependent, and the new routes will help the region to diversify and to have access for the transition and even beyond 2050 from United States, from Greece, Bulgaria, and then Romania. Ukraine also will benefit from these investments, and these are complementing what we already did. Transgaz will have access to new business, taking the fees, and also these investments will be extremely important, and I congratulate Mr. STERIAN for the achievements that Transgaz had finalizing BRUA, but also for the efforts that Transgaz is doing in order to complete the vertical corridor. And we contribute to the region also with the Neptune Deep project. There, Romgaz and OMV Petrom will start exploiting in 2027, will add up to 8 billion cubic meters. Most of it will be for Romania usage, for the new capacities, for Azomureș, for everything that we are preparing. But part of it could be also for the countries in the region, and this is extremely important. That's why the vertical corridor and the new routes are even more relevant for Romania in the new context.
Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. BUତ୍ତOI, and we will continue.
Thank you very much. Congratulations for the 10th edition of this so prestigious event. And sorry that I couldn't be in Romania, but this is the very important energy ministers meeting in Cyprus, and Romania should be represented here. Thank you so much and good luck.
Of course. Thank you. Mr. RAVNACHKI, your point, your Bulgarian aspect and your view, not only from the Bulgaria, but from the entire region about the vertical gas corridor.
Thank you. For sure, I will agree with what the State Secretary had said. This project is important on many levels. First of all, it's not just some theory that will be put in practice in the near future. It's already here. It's a cooperation on TSO from so many countries: Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova, Ukraine, and then additionally Hungary and Slovakia, which is not something easily achievable. In that sense, Bulgaria is the leading, I would say, is the leading investor in that corridor. Not only we did have a final investment decision in 2024, but we've already invested 300 million euros in the development of those loopings on the territory of Bulgaria. So we will have an increase of the capacity, a 50% increase in the capacity with Greece, and 100% increase in the capacity with Romania. By the end of this year, all the work should be done, and those additional this additional infrastructure would be usable by the users. Another important thing is that it's not a completely new infrastructure, but it also uses some of the existing ones, which is, I think it's a right balance between full utilization of what you have and what you actually need additionally. I think now it's the time for the users to dedicate, to be part of this and book capacities. Because when we speak about resilience and energy security, and when we speak about predictability, I think if we have those long-term contracts that we were running away from in the past, and we go back to this now, I think this would give us a certainty for the businesses, for the economy in general. Thank you.
We just listened about investments in infrastructure, investments in interconnections. Ms. Walton, what do you think that are the primary indicators of a secure energy corridor when looking at the long-term investments in emerging markets like the Black Sea region?
Yes, thank you very much. I'd just like to actually comment on my colleague's comment, actually. I found very interesting with reflection on sort of EU policy and regulation and how that affects prices. And the clear example of having done it completely and utterly wrong is the UK. And we left the EU. We had no Brexit dividend from doing this. And we could create our own energy policy. And instead, we went entirely the other way and managed really to shoot ourselves in the foot with having maybe an overly green agenda to be super carbon neutral, which actually the net effect globally on that is zero. The effect on the UK economy is the electricity bills and energy bills are incredibly expensive. There were two very big data centers that came to the UK. The US loves dealing with the UK and working with the UK to set up businesses. They bailed because when they modeled out the cost of energy, it was too ridiculously expensive to actually operate there. Small businesses cannot lay on a second shift, so our whole industrial base is ruined as well. And the knock-on effects of these policies, and the UK being an extreme example of where it can all go wrong, is a good example of that. I just wanted to bring that up because you make a very good point that it is much more significant than I think certainly from an investor's perspective, as we see where businesses would be de-investing from an area in downstream industrial projects because of the energy price. So, but in talking about the secure energy, which is also part of this too, right? Is to have good policy. Is I think there's five big points that investors like to look at, and one is, excuse me, supplier diversification depth, and what I mean by that is a corridor that connects to a single source. One single source is actually a recipe for disaster and for failure, and you actually brought this up. The most investable corridors are those that can receive gas or electricity from multiple origins and also allows for flexibility. Another one is jurisdictional governance and stability along the route within the EU. This is fantastic. A full length of a corridor is only as secure as its weakest political link. For investors, this means we examine every transit country, not just the terminus. Infrastructure redundancy and bypass capacity, and this is how the projects would actually be potentially scored actually for investment. Can a corridor function if one section is damaged or blocked? Does it have a physical interconnection with alternative routes? Regulatory and tariff predictability. Long-term infrastructure investment requires regulatory certainty. Investors need to know that the interconnection tariffs, third-party access rule, and grid codes will remain stable for 20 or 30 years over the investment horizon, because these are big infrastructure projects and they take a long time to realize the ROI. Future-proofing for the energy transition, and this is where the Green Channel and the Black Sea is actually very important. A corridor built only for fossil fuel, gas that cannot be repurposed for green hydrogen or electricity transmission will face a stranded asset risk within 15 to 20 years. I mean, this also begs other issues about the supply chain and the dependency on China, because 80% of all solar kit is in China, and lithium and things like that. So you're kind of potentially trading one dependency for another. And that supplier diversification risk, I think, is the most important, because the Iran disruption has shown that even your backup supply can be destroyed and disrupted simultaneously. And I think that's the biggest risk that we've seen. There's these simultaneous disruptions.
I see. And Mr. MENEGAZZO, how do electricity and green energy investments, as we said, complement existing gas routes in the broader effort to stabilize European prices, energy prices, and ensure energy security in general?
Yeah. Let me comment upon the comment on my comment. Listen. In our sector, we are starting to neglect the base load factor. So the foreseeable future that from the technical standpoint starts to be more and more clear is that base load will not be an issue for the future. Flexibility will be the key point, the turning point. And yet we have all the manuals, all the regulation, all the relevant stuff that are based on this concept of baseload. Why? Because we still think at a sector in which we had, bottom. Today the system is getting more and more bottom up. We have prosumers. customers that inject energy in the grid. We have a system that was designed for big generation capacity, injecting energy in the system, and then customer that had two things to do, pay or not to pay the bill. That's it, okay? This world does not exist anymore. And because this world does not exist anymore, we need to change the way in which we approach it. Not from today to tomorrow, because this is impossible. But we need to have a clear vision of what is going to happen in 10, 15 years, because if you invest in asset, you need to plan investment for the next 15 to 20 years. And our thinking, and not our as a company, but generally speaking, when you speak with an electricity infrastructure company that invests in renewables or in grids, we start to think that we do not have to accommodate the base load. We need to create a system that is flexible. And the flexibility comes from renewables. Now, I see the point, and I agree with the fact that 80% of the solar panels are produced by China. This is a fact, it's true. In the same time, I don't like the dependency of a molecule that is a constant in my life. So if I buy a PV and I install it on my rooftop, I know that for 10, 15 years, I have ensured somehow an output of energy. Okay? The topic should be, how should Europe fill the gap that we left somebody else to grab? So investing in innovation, investing in the supply chain that we are so much dependent upon, okay? But for me, the topic is not to be dependent from I prefer to be dependent on something that is technological because I have my chance. If I speed up and I invest in innovation, I can fill the gap. If I don't have gas, if I don't have a specific natural resource, I cannot invent it. So the fact that in Europe we have been lazy for the last 10, 15 years, not investing in innovation, this is a completely different discussion. Again, for me the situation in which we are today should be a wake-up call of what we didn't care as much as we wanted. And it's a matter of security because all of us preferred to have cheaper goods produced in China. All of us have phones.
Yes.
Phones are produced in China.
Yes.
Okay? And we are dependent. Everybody is dependent on phones. Okay? There is no discussion about, okay, how dependent are we in phones because they are produced in China. So we need to, readdress a little bit. I still believe that the energy transition based on renewables and electricity, more and more electricity, is the winning factor that Europe competitivity can have, because now we have proofs. We have data that this can happen. In UK that didn't work. I'm not very, I don't know the UK system, but again, in Spain, where it was based on renewables, today the economy is more competitive, the price of energy is cheaper.
Yes. So investing in innovation, I think, is a crucial thing. And what about you, Mr. RAVNACHKI? We look towards the next winter and beyond. What do you think is the one single priority in terms of infrastructure that we must get right today to ensure energy security for next year?
Well, for sure, we should keep up with keeping the existing infrastructure in a good shape. there should be even better cooperation between the TSO. We've already seen good one. And for sure, we need to have projects like the vertical corridor in place so that we have access to more sources, diversify the sources, diversify the roads. All of us here today speaking about having the opportunity to have different interconnections and not to have bottlenecks. These are the factors that are affecting how the source and the commodity gets where it's needed most. And when you have the commodity, when you have the infrastructure, then you can also develop markets, because in the beginning we started that there is no market. And for example, from gas perspective in Bulgaria, I can tell you that 7 years ago there was no markets at all. It was 95% dependence on a single source, with just one incumbent in the country providing gas for everyone. Now we have a well-functioning gas exchange with more than 140 participants on the gas exchange. We have a transparency in how the prices are formed. We have availability for businesses to get the best prices. And all this is actually building the resilience, decreasing the dependence, and providing opportunity for the economy to grow and for people to feel more secure.
Okay. Ms. Walton, your one single priority for the winter that's coming, about the investment perspective, to ensure these synergies, energy synergies like the corridors remain resilient against future geopolitical shocks.
Yes, so it's a very interesting question, because at the end of the day we have to pay for all of this. So we have to be able to mobilize capital to meet this demand, to create this innovation, to release policy so all this can happen, which makes it more attractive to investors. So the question is, it's not do we have a plan, but do we have the money to pay for it, and what do we need to do to be able to mobilize that investment? Of course, one of the big things is the support for, there are many big infrastructure funds, right? But now with all the geopolitical risk, they have to completely rejig all of their models to be able to price this in and to see actually how they'll possibly do this and at what possible price. So public-private partnerships and backstops from governments is really, really important, not to replace private capital, but to take private capital and actually make it viable and bankable. So I think this is a very big issue. And the Iran conflict has clarified something that's very important. The pace of geopolitical disruption is outrunning the pace of infrastructure financing. And in fact, I think the velocity of that is almost impossible as we speak today to be able to project. And that is a level of volatility that is very, very scary for financial markets and for investors. And this is why government help and participation is critical. But even having said that, the risk is extremely high. So what do we need to do? I think we need to be able to build in for investors a resilience premium into the European capital markets framework. So that means making it explicitly worthwhile to invest in corridors, not just because they're profitable, but because they are strategic. I don't have one quick answer about how that's possible. All the things that I think we talked about today and all the risks are a mosaic that actually brings that together. And just, one point I think that we really need to be aware of is about trading our vulnerabilities. So as we hedge one geopolitical risk, in this case I'm not talking about the financial instruments as we did it before, and this would be through policy, for example. What are we trading off, really? And yes, we talked about China and its supplying. The one thing we can always trust about China is what is in their financial interest. They want to sell us this stuff. It's fantastic. They control 80% of the market. Lots of sunshines, right? That's wonderful. But in terms of LNG, now 60% of it coming from the U.S. We know that that's very, very volatile as a trading partner. So I think these are things that we really need to keep in mind when we look at investment and in pricing in this market.
Okay, Mr. MENEGAZZO, your one single priority. And the second question, we just listened about the importance of private capital. In times of crisis, how critical is the synergy between the public and private sectors in safeguarding energy security?
So of course the priority is, as the short-term priority is how we'll end up this year. And I'm not speaking as a company, but as part of the energy sector. Specifically in Romania, prices are too high. There is no, let's say, system that can support big consumers like in other countries, in Italy, in Spain, in France, to have long-term contracts at cheaper price or state aids, for example. And this is something that whomever will be at the government should look at, because Romania needs this kind of big investors, and this kind of big investors needs to have clarity, and they have to be encouraged to stay. Okay, so this is. Then there is the topic of the household customer that is not topic A, topic B. One is a priority and the other is not, okay? But as our colleague said, somebody needs to pay. So all these things have a price. The problem is that people, or we all together, we are not very keen in show the value. We think about the cost, but we are not having a clear outlook of the value, because anyone is available or more willing to pay something if the value is clear, if the value is created in time. If it's only about cost, okay, people will immediately think that somebody is grabbing their money out of their pocket. So is this something that can be achievable, that is achievable by one actor of the system? No. This is a discussion that has to be public, private, so state entities, private entities, and for this you need to have a common agenda. And so all of this to say that my priority would be to sit at the table and find these 2-3 things, data-driven, not political-driven, data-driven, that can create a common ground of discussion for the general public, investors, citizens, etc., etc., because people need to feel that there is a direction. And the actors in this system are doing something not because they are heretic, but because they have a vision, and they are consequent with this vision. It's very simple. It's not, and like every simple thing is the most hard to achieve. So I think that I covered both of your...
Yes. So we have 6 minutes left. So 2 minutes each. As geopolitical tensions with Iran and US, so no signs of resolution. Are you optimistic about the future of energy security and supplies in the next few months? Ms. Walton, sorry.
No.
No.
Yeah, so I don't think it takes 2 minutes to explain that. I think the political volatility is just too crazy to have any confidence about that in the next few months. I think a bit longer term, I have a lot more confidence.
What would be the implications of...
Oh, you mean further volatility?
Yes, yes.
Oh, I think it will exacerbate the problems in the energy markets and create huge, in the energy markets, a lot more expense. But we have to look at the downstream problems with it. When you say the problem in Iran, you're talking about the Strait of Hormuz. Not only, other things come through it. It's a food crisis as well. So we have to, if we're looking outside of energy, which I think we have to, if you're talking about that problem, because of all the fertilizer that comes through. I mean, luckily that, Americans worry about where their stuff they order from Amazon, will that come through it? No, that's safe. But food and the energy I think, are the two biggest worries. And I don't have a lot of confidence in the next few months that that's going to be resolved. It's just going to get worse.
I see, I see. Mr. RAVNACHKI, are you optimistic?
Well, I have to agree. I have to agree. I cannot be very optimistic about it. We have seen the initial results just in a couple of weeks and how this was affected. We've seen Europe is not that dependent on that type of energy, but now the markets are so interconnected that obviously it affects the whole world. And it's not simply about energy. Everything is based on energy, and it comes from this. So in that sense, there is a lot of uncertainty, and we cannot, find solutions when we are not certain about how this would further develop.
Okay, okay. Mr. MENEGAZZO, how about you?
I'm more optimistic.
You're done.
This is the upside of dealing with electricity. So again, depends where we put the line of the worst case scenario. So if we are speaking about scarcity of electricity, I don't think it will be the case. Okay? Which is something that, it's already this time and era, it's something that is encouraging. There will be no scarcity of electricity. Price-wise, it's a different story, okay? But it's something that, if you know that you will have a problem in that direction, then for me, the entire discussion that we are having about electricity is about efficiency. So, yes, there is a risk that prices will spike. And in this part of Europe, spikes are going to be more, let's say, hitting than in other parts, because we don't have the infrastructure, I mean the methodological, the regulatory, the institutional framework to create this pillow, okay, that can support people for 2-3 months, okay, and then you will find but if we speak about scarcity of energy, of electricity, I'm quite confident investment in energy, in electricity, mostly renewables, are up and running, flexibility with batteries, investment in grids that can ensure this flexibility to be delivered and used by the end customers. In Romania, we have around 300,000 prosumers that popped up in 3 years. So they are producing more than 2 nuclear reactors. And this is happening in less than 3 years. So to build a nuclear power plant, you need 10, 12, 15 years if you have luck, if you are lucky, with costs that are unpredictable because there is no nuclear plant that, has the price that originally you designed. In 3 years, 300 citizens decided to be players in the energy market, and they did it. So you know what? Who wins always? Reality. Reality always wins, and reality is based on data. These are the data. So I'm optimistic because I see that people and customers are getting more and more interested in this sector. They are starting to be active participants, and this drives my optimism.
Nice, nice. Thank you. Let's close this session with an optimistic view. And I want to thank you all for this discussion, this panel. And a special thanks to the New Strategy Center for the collaboration and Mr. Skoutarou and his team. And thank you very much all. Thank you.